Okay, so my topic will be on adolescent lifestyle. It's a very elaborate
Oh,
topic.
sorry, sorry.
So the objectives of my talk, I've structured my talk in such a way that I will discuss what comprises a healthy lifestyle in adolescence, the determinants of a healthy lifestyle with special focus on nutrition, sleep, and physical activity, some common problems that we see in pediatric practice with the adolescent patients, and the role of a primary care pediatrician in dealing with such patients.
Managing slides.
So, what is lifestyle? The WHO defines lifestyle as an identifiable behavioral pattern determined by the interaction between individual personal characteristics, social interactions, socio-economic and environmental life conditions. But actually, we needn't worry about this long definition because, as far as an adolescent is concerned, his lifestyle, the most important factor that determines his lifestyle is friends, friends, and friends. So peer influence is a very important factor for an adolescent. So whatever his friends do, he follows the same. So we have to ensure that this influence from the peer group is in a positive way and not in a negative way. So we should just ensure, as pediatricians and parents, we should ensure that this healthy adolescent comprises of the following: a successful transition from child to adult, the skill development he needs to respond to the various changes that takes place during this period of adolescence, the various physical changes and mental changes, absence of physical or mental disease, and finally development of a healthy lifestyle. That's what we are going to see now. Now, coming to the determinants of a healthy lifestyle, the first and foremost is the health responsibility, meaning the self assertiveness or the self awareness that an adolescent should have. And then we have nutrition, physical activity, positive life perspective, interpersonal relationships, stress management, and spiritual health. So I'll just focus on nutrition, sleep, and physical activity for want of time. So coming to nutrition, which is the key determinant or the most important factor of an adolescent's lifestyle. So we have, according to the food guidelines, all of us here, we know that our diet should comprise of 50 to 60% of carbs, 15% of proteins, and 20% of fats. Of these composition of the diet, this is the healthy eating plate which an adolescent should be following. And half of this plate should contain of the whole grains and protein from both the animal and non-animal sources. And the other half of the plate should contain vegetables and fruits, preferably fruits of all colors and veggies of all categories. So this is what the healthy eating plate should contain. On the top right, we can see the oil. The healthy oils, it's another important factor. Uh, we should avoid trans fat in the diet. The trans fat is what we see in all the pastries and all those processed foods that is available in various colors and shapes in all the supermarkets. So all these contain trans fat, which has to be avoided. And even in the home cooked food, sometimes the oil may be recycled, which may contain trans fat. And in the top left, we have the water. So coming to water, an adolescent will need around 2 to 3 liters of water per day. And most of these adolescents overlook the intake of water. Even if they feel thirsty, they tend not to drink much, so leaving them dehydrated all the time. So we have to concentrate on the water intake also. So coming to the recommended dietary allowance for the adolescents, the boys would require somewhere between 2000 to 3000 calories depending on the age group, and around 50 grams of protein per day. And the girls will need somewhere around 2000 to 2500 calories, again with 50 grams of protein. So both of them would need 800 milligrams of calcium, or roughly speaking, an adolescent boy would need the same amount of calories as that of an adult sedentary male, and an adolescent girl would need the amount of calories a little more than what her mother is taking. So these are the ICMR guidelines that have been taken from Dr. Swati Bhave's ma'am textbook of adolescent medicine. And also important is iron intake for adolescent, which varies between 30 to 40 milligrams per day. And other micronutrients are also very important.
Mm.
And now coming to the don'ts. So we saw what an adolescent should be taking. Now we come to what an adolescent shouldn't be taking. So we all know these adolescents are into junk food intake. So to popularize this term junks was introduced by our past president, IAP president, Dr. Piyush Gupta sir. And there is an excellent article in the IAP journal, Pediatrics, where there are guidelines related to the junks consumption and the guidelines to be followed by the schools and the government. So according to this, the mnemonic, the J stands for junk foods, which foods high in fats, sugars, salts, at the same time lacking in micronutrients. So these foods, they contribute not only contribute to overweight and obesity, but also lead to micronutrient deficiency. So U stands for ultra processed foods, meaning the food goes through repeated cycles of process, which makes them calorie dense. So even a small amount of the ultra processed food may lead to fat deposition and obesity in the long run. N stands for nutritionally inappropriate foods, or foods that provide empty calories and of no nutritional value. The C stands for caffeinated, colored, carbonated beverages, which is a very popular thing among especially the adolescent boys. And these contain the caffeine content in these beverages a little more than what an adolescent should be having. This may lead to problems in the long run. And finally, sugar sweetened beverages. So we have all these fruit juices coming in colored cartons and packages. And these adolescents think that these fruit juices are very healthy, but it's otherwise. Actually, these, for example, a 200 ml carton of any fruit juice may contain about 20 to 30 grams of sugar, which is almost half the requirement of sugar for 1 day. So these adolescents, we should encourage them to have to be very proactive and look at the nutritional value or look at the labels of these foods and decide before making a choice. They should look at the labels and decide whether this is a healthy one. So the nutritional values of all the packed items should be displayed. So what are the ill effects of junks consumption? So the first and the foremost is, we all know, it's overweight and obesity. The second will be the cardiometabolic risk. Research and studies have shown that the process of atherosclerosis, or the fat deposition in the coronary artery, begins as early in adolescence. So any teenager or adolescent should watch what he is eating, especially when it comes to the fats and oils. So this leads to an increase in the lipids, cholesterol level, and the decrease in the good cholesterol or the HDL levels. And also this junk food consumption leads to an increased risk of insulin resistance and even frank diabetes mellitus. Essential hypertension, especially due to the increased amount of salt in these processed foods. And we have seen that this junk food consumption leads to behavioral changes in these adolescents. And this has been attributed to the oxidative stress response and the inflammation associated with the harmful chemicals that are released during the processing of these junk foods. And other less important things like dental caries. Another one important thing that I wanted to highlight is these caffeinated drinks, they carry the risk of cardiotoxicity. It could range from a simple tachycardia or to even severe issues like arrhythmias and even sudden death. And we even had newspaper reports of teens who were like binge watching or gaming with all their junk food and drinks and suddenly collapsing on the table. We have had 2 to 3 cases of death. All of these can be attributed to such harmful chemicals. So what are the common problems that a pediatrician encounters when it comes to nutrition in an adolescent? So the common thing that the parent tells or even the adolescent reveals during the head's interview is that he skips breakfast. So skipping breakfast and inadequate hydration are the two most important problems encountered. And this inadequate hydration can lead to like symptoms like easy fatigability. They also complain of giddiness, and when we check their pressures, it might be low. And later if we probe into their water intake, it may be low. And just correction of this hydration and nutrition can solve these simple problems. And there are again deficiencies like anemia and micronutrient deficiencies giving to many problems, especially in adolescent girls. Anemia is a very important thing to watch out for, because these girls are future prospective mothers and they have to have their iron stores uh, should be good. And this weekly iron folic acid supplementation done by the government is very helpful in preventing adolescent anemia. And then we have all the obesity and the lifestyle diseases. And for nutrition, when it comes to nutrition, teenage girls, as we already discussed from the first speaker, Dr. Shri Priya, about the body image disorders, they all present with these dietary fads. They're influenced by their friends and they follow like quick fix diets to lose weight and land up in eating disorders. At the same time, the boys are engrossed in going for these energy drinks and protein shakes, influenced by these friends. And when coming to the protein shakes, I just wanted to highlight, I just had two adolescent boys coming to me at the age of 13 14 with complaints of gynecomastia. So when probing further into their nutrition and the dietary pattern, like they admitted to taking these shakes, and we should also know that some of these protein shakes may contain steroids, and they may also contain minute amounts of phytoestrogens. So we as pediatricians should be aware of these things, and we should do this anticipatory guidance and ask them for their dietary pattern, because they are easily influenced by their friends. And if they're going to the gyms, they're influenced by the trainers to buy these protein shakes, which are very expensive. And in the long run, it can create many problems in their health. Next, coming to sleep. So I just wanted to focus on sleep as an important lifestyle issue, because it is the most, I thought it's the most ignored part of a lifestyle. An adolescent needs about 8 to 10 hours of sleep per day, but there are certain changes taking place in the biological systems of an adolescent that result in a 2 hour delay in the sleep wake cycle. For example, a child who used to sleep by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock every day, when he reaches the adolescent age, the circadian rhythm is altered so that there is a 2 hour delay. So he may sleep by 11 or 12. But at the same time, he has to get up at the same time early morning to report to his school. Or as Preeti ma'am said, there are so many coaching centers, IIT, medical. He has to report to these coaching centers. In addition, he may have some extracurricular activities. So all these are taking a toll on his sleep, and this leads to a sleep debt and leading to a chronic sleep insufficiency. We as pediatricians should remember that sleep in adolescence supports learning, memory, attention, cognition, and emotion processing. So it's not enough if he goes to multiple coaching classes. He needs to have a proper duration and the quality of sleep. So this is one slide where I wanted to take some time, because this slide explains the whole behavior, the sleep behavior in in a teen, and what are the outcomes of this deranged sleep physiology. So the first thing that tells about the modifiable extrinsic pressures, the first one is the school start times. So most of the schools start very early, especially for the higher secondary, that is the adolescent age group students, for want of academic thing. And in addition to this, they have extracurricular activities and also these coaching centers. And finally is the technology. So every adolescent, when he retires to his room for sleep, into his bed, he invariably carries a gadget with him, be it a mobile or a laptop or whatever. So there is a gadget that takes another 1 or 2 hours of his sleep time invariably. So whatever we advise, they tend to do this. So all these take a toll on his sleep duration. So these are all modifiable extrinsic pressures where we can play a role in preventing this problem. So coming to the sleep behavior, we, as already told, the circadian rhythms are altered, so the timing is a bit delayed. And coming to the sleep physiology, we have these slow waves and the sleep spindles. So there is a derangement between the slow waves and spindles, which have an effect on the gray matter and the white matter maturation in the brain. So as we already saw of all the brain development slides, we know that the adolescent's prefrontal cortex is still maturing, and this altered sleep physiology has an effect on this maturation patterns in the adolescent brain. So what are the outcomes of this problem of this deranged sleep in a teenage? The first thing is the intellectual ability is reduced, learning and memory problems are there. All these leads to academic problems and a fall in grades. And another one is the emotional regulation. Because of these sleep derangements, they tend to have these aggressive behavior and anger issues, and sometimes hyperactivity, oppositional. There are so many behavioral issues that can be attributed to this deranged sleep physiology. And one more thing I wanted to highlight is the risk taking and injury. Because they have a chronic sleep deprivation, they tend to have this daytime sleepiness. And if they're driving vehicles, so this sleep deprivation may lead to what is called the sleep cycles during the daytime. And especially when driving a vehicle, this can be very harmful, resulting in even serious accidents and injuries. So this this shows that sleep, the duration and quality of sleep is a very important factor that determines the healthy lifestyle in a adolescent. So what can we do? What can we do as pediatricians and as parents? What can we do to ensure a proper sleep hygiene in an adolescent? So first thing is that they should maintain a regular sleep schedule on all days of the week. But it is a very difficult thing. So we can advise them. It is even difficult for us to follow. We tend to sleep late on weekends. But at least we have to try to keep the difference in the wake times to less than an hour. If suppose they want to sleep late on weekends, just keep the difference less than an hour, and then create a sleep friendly physical environment, a cool, quiet and dark room. And the bed should be used only for sleeping, not for any other activities like homework or working on projects, etc. And next, incorporate exercise into the daily routine, because this releases the feel good hormones and gives them a good night's sleep. And they should take a break and go outside and get some bright sunlight once in a while.
Excuse
This
me, slide
helps.
is moving.
Sir,
Slides are moving.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah,
It's moving, sir.
am I audible, sir?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Please continue.
Okay, so they should get some that sunlight for that vitamin D, and also to keep the body's internal clock on track. And regular meals, avoid going to bed on an empty stomach, and limit screens or gadgets in the bedroom. And another important thing is avoid caffeinated drinks, heavy meals, and also heavy workout before bedtime. And they should have try to have 1 hour screen free time before going to bed. So we have to ensure that all these are followed for a healthy sleep hygiene. So next, coming to physical activity, which is a very important part of an adolescent lifestyle. So we as pediatricians, when we see overweight, obese patients, we advise them to do physical activity. But I thought we should have some knowledge, basic knowledge about physical activity, so that we should advise them in a better way. So physical activity, it has both the exercise that can be done in a gym or at home, which is a planned, structured physical activity, and also non-exercise activities that includes the day-to-day activities. As Vijayarani ma'am told, many adolescents say that I work out in the gym for an hour, but at home they are literally couch potatoes. So they also have to do the day-to-day activities and keep them active. So the WHO recommendations of physical activity applies to all children aged 6 to 17 years. So which says they should do 60 minutes or more of physical activity daily, and most of this activity should be either moderate or vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity. And as part of this 60-minute activity, they should also include muscle strengthening and bone strengthening activities on at least 3 days of the week. I'll come to it in the next slides. So coming to the types of physical activity, the first one is the aerobic, which we saw, the activities that are intense and involve the large muscle groups. For example, walking, running, basketball, dancing, all kinds of sports activities. And I just wanted to highlight a little on this anaerobic physical activity, which means high intensity activity that exceeds the capacity of the cardiovascular system to provide oxygen, meaning it involves the non-oxygen pathways, and it involves sprinting, powerlifting, example for anaerobic. And this is very important because it builds the lean muscle, and this anaerobic physical activity leads to a fat burn or calorie burn, for up to 48 hours post workout, so that the workout that is done on the next day has a better calorie burn. So this anaerobic physical activity should be incorporated at least on 2 to 3 days of a week for better results, especially for obese and overweight children. And then muscle strengthening physical activity doesn't necessarily mean lifting weights in a gym or doing very severe activities. It could also include daily activities like carrying heavy bags, climbing stairs. Climbing stairs is a very interesting and a good exercise that improves the endurance in an adolescent. And especially the last year when we are all confined to our homes and we couldn't go to gyms or do walking or running. So this climbing stairs could be done very easily inside the confines of a home, and it's a very good exercise for endurance and also for strengthening the muscles. Bone strengthening, movements that create impact and muscle loading forces on the brain, for example, jumping, hopping, and things, skipping, etc. And there are some less important things like balance training and flexibility training, which is more important for adolescents who are engaged in sports related activity. And another important thing I wanted to highlight is yoga and Tai Chi. These are two amazing exercises that combine muscle strengthening, balance training, light intensity aerobic activity, and flexibility all in one package. So it can also be called the mind body activities, as they relax the mind too. So it's high time that we as Indians, so we invented the yoga. So the Western are aping us in doing yoga. So we should do it. Like we should encourage our adolescents to follow this yoga at least once in a week so that it relaxes the mind. So the Physical Activity Guidelines Advisory Committee report of 2018 has documented the following conclusions, which is on a very positive note, especially for the adolescent age group. These are the following conclusions. The higher amount of physical activity has shown the following advantages: an increased cardiorespiratory fitness, increased muscular fitness, thereby decreasing the fat, increased bone mass, and improved bone structure and strength, thereby decreasing the risk of fractures, a better lipid profile, and decreased risk of obesity and lifestyle diseases. So having said so much about physical activity, we last year 2020 was such a year that we were all driven by this pandemic and we were all confined to our homes and inside four walls. Our children were into e-learning and we were into webinars. So we were all confined to our screens. So we were advising the children to limit screen time, but we couldn't do that. But we had to learn to adapt to this new normal, that is the screen time. So I just added two slides on what is called the ergonomics, which is the interaction between human activity and the components of this activity. Because we are glued to our screens, our children are into the online classes for about 4 to 6 hours a day. And I thought I would add some tips for them to be healthy in spite of these continuous screen time. So this 20-20-20 rule, which is taking a 20-second break every 20 minutes and looking 20 feet away from the screen. This has to be followed by the children and the adolescents. And during these breaks, they can do some simple stretches like side bends, shoulder shrugs, finger, wrist and thumb stretch, etc. And while they are seated for the class, we should ensure that the top of the monitor should be in the eye level, and the face should be straight ahead, and the head shouldn't be slumped forward. And the sitting should be proper with the height of the chair, if possible, adjustable. Eye strain should be avoided by reducing lighting in the room and also reducing the screen brightness and taking breaks in between. And if possible, a footrest can be had with the keeping the feet flat on the floor. So we are again poised for like online classes for another 6 months or so, because just now the vaccine rollout has begun. So we cannot expect the schools to open in the immediate future. So these are some tips that we can, as pediatricians and parents, ensure that our children follow these. And coming to the other determinants of lifestyle, I just tell a few points due to want of time. The first one, as I said, it's the health responsibility. Every adolescent should be self-motivated to follow a healthy lifestyle and be responsible for his or her health. And then positive life perspective, an optimistic attitude is needed for a teenager to cross over the various challenges and hurdles that he faces. And next, coming to the interpersonal relationships, this is one important thing that we have to be aware of, because our teenagers, they have a very good IQs, their intelligent quotients are very high, they enter prestigious colleges and land up in very plum jobs, but they lack in what is called the emotional quotient and the empathy. This is the key to holding successful relationships, but unfortunately they land up they fail in relationships, leading to divorces and things like that. So we should focus on this interpersonal relationships. And stress management, this is a topic by itself, so I'm not going into much. And finally, spiritual health doesn't necessarily mean visiting a temple or worshipping. It relates to the connection with self, with others, with nature, and with the supreme power. So teenagers who develop mindfulness as told by Dr. Preeti ma'am, these adolescents, they have better resilience and score well in the mental health issues. So coming finally to take home points, what can a pediatrician do when it comes to an adolescent lifestyle? A proper heads interview covers all the lifestyle issues faced by an adolescent, and anticipatory guidance is what we need to do while doing the heads interview, which helps them lead a healthy lifestyle. And again, counseling parents is another important factor. And when it comes to an adolescent clinic, we can display some posters or flyers pertaining to nutrition, physical activity, preventing obesity, etc. So this should be the prime responsibility of an adolescent physician and a pediatrician. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for all the office bearers of IEP. And also, I would like to thank Dr. Newton, sir, for giving me valuable inputs in doing this presentation. Thank you, sir. Over to Dr. Newton, sir.
Dr. Newton, sir, please proceed.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'm